Welcome to the now 14 minutes late Legislation Regulation Committee. My name is Greg Lippy, chairperson of the committee. Before we convene, I advise all individuals observing or participating in the meeting that the meeting is being conducted consistent with the provisions of Governor Gavin Newsom's Executive Order N-29-20. Participants watching the webcast will only be able to observe the meeting. Anyone interested in participating in the meeting must join the WebEx meeting. Information and instructions are posted on our website. I will announce when we are accepting public comment on the various issues, and the moderator will open the lines as appropriate. I have advised staff to allot 2 minutes to each individual providing comments. This approach is necessary to facilitate this meeting. I appreciate everyone's understanding and patience as we navigate this meeting format. Before we get started, will staff moderating the meeting please provide general instructions? Moderator, your turn.
Good morning. This is the moderator. During the meeting today, we will be asking for all members to keep their microphones muted unless they are speaking. And for members in the public members attending, when the chair advises we will be going to public comment, I will be opening a Q&A panel. In that panel, to access it, you will click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. You will enter, I would like to make a comment in the comment section, and then submit that to all panelists. Today's comments will be limited to 2 minutes with a 2 minutes with a 10-second reminder. After the 2 minutes, I will be muting your microphone. And at that, I will hand it back over to the chair.
Thank you. I will now take a roll call to establish a quorum. Members, as I call your name, please remember to open your line before speaking. Maria Serpa.
Here.
Thank you.
Absentee member.
Thank you. Ryan Brooks. Ryan? No, Ryan. Sung Oh.
Here. Can you hear me okay?
I can now. Thank you. Cheryl Butler.
Here.
Thank you. Shirley Kim.
Here.
Thank you, Shirley. And I'm here. I will ask one more time. Ryan Brooks. Not here? Okay. Well, we have a quorum anyway. I will go ahead. With a quorum being established, the committee will now entertain any public comments for items not on the agenda. To facilitate this portion of the meeting, as I previously announced, the moderator will open the phone lines for individuals to provide the opportunity for public comment. You're not required to identify yourself, but you may do so. As we open the lines, I remind everyone that the committee cannot take action on these items except to decide whether to place an item on a future agenda. Moderator, please open the lines.
This is the moderator. I've opened the Q&A panel. Again, if you'd like to make a comment, please click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Enter, I would like to make a comment in the ask field and submit that to all panelists. I will now pause for a moment to allow time for submission. Chair, we've received no requests for public comments. At your direction, I will close the Q&A panel.
Yes, please.
It is closed.
Okay, we're going on to agenda item 3, discussion and consideration of legislation impacting the practice of pharmacy, the board's jurisdiction, or board operations. I will be providing an update on legislation previously considered by the board. This is for information only and intended to provide members with the outcomes of the various measures considered by the board. As we begin, I advise everyone that discussion on implementation of some of these measures will be addressed during the Enforcement and Compounding Committee meeting scheduled for later today as well. As the information I will be reviewing is for information only, I will not seek member comments or public comments until the end of the updates. Start with Assembly Bill 1710. This measure provides pharmacists with the authority to independently order and administer FDA authorized or approved COVID-19 vaccines. The board had a support position on the measure, and the measure has passed. It's been chaptered. Next is Assembly Bill 2028. AB 2028 would have amended provisions of the Open Meetings Act. As indicated in the meeting materials, the board had established an opposed unless amended position on the measure. Subsequent amendments were made that would have addressed the board's concerns. However, the bill failed passage. The next is Assembly Bill 2077, which extends until January 2026 the sunset date of current law that allows the retail sale or furnishing of a hypodermic needle or syringe to a person 18 years of age or older without a prescription. The board had a support position on the measure passed, and it's chaptered. Assembly Bill 2113 is next. That will require boards within the DCA to expedite the initial licensure process for an applicant who supplies satisfactory evidence to the board that the applicant is a refugee, been granted evidence to the board, been granted political asylum, or possesses a special immigrant visa. As indicated in the materials, the board did not have a position on the measure. It has passed and been chaptered. Assembly Bill 2549 is next. This one failed passage. The measure would have required the board to issue temporary licenses to military spouses and require the board to promulgate regulations. Under the provisions of the measure, the temporary license would have been good for up to 12 months. During our prior discussion of the measure, the board expressed concerns with the measure as the board would have lost the ability to assess for minimum competency prior to issuing a temporary pharmacist license. The board had an opposed unless amended position on the measure. As I mentioned, it failed. Next is Assembly Bill 2983. This measure would have prohibited a pharmacy from automatically contacting a prescriber to request refill authorization unless the prescriber or patient had expressly authorized such contact. The board did not take a position on the measure, and the measure failed. Next is Assembly Bill 3045, which would have required boards within the DCA to issue a license to an applicant if the applicant met specified requirements, including that the applicant was honorably discharged from the armed forces or married or in a domestic partnership or other legal union with an active duty member. This measure also failed. As you may recall, the board established an opposed unless amended position because of concerns about the board's inability to assess for minimum competency. Next is Assembly Bill 3342. The board established a support position on this bill. As related to the board's jurisdiction, this measure would have authorized the pharmacy to furnish epinephrine auto-injectors to the State Department of Health Care Services under the program created pursuant to the bill, subject to similar requirements. The measure failed. Next is Senate Bill 878, which was signed by the governor, and it will require boards within the DCA to prominently display the current time frame for processing initial and renewal license applications on its internet website. As the committee and board previously discussed, the board publicly reports application processing times as part of the quarterly licensing committee and board meetings. The board did not have an established position on the measure. As I mentioned, it did pass and the governor signed it. Next is Senate Bill 1474. This bill extends the operations of several boards for 1 year to allow for review by oversight committees in the coming year. And we are one of those boards. As we previously discussed, due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the unprecedented nature of the 2020 legislative session, oversight review was postponed. Members, having reviewed the measures, I'd like to see if any of you have comments. As a reminder, please open your line, identify yourself before speaking. Any members that have comments, please Go ahead. Okay, not hearing any comments. I will ask the moderator to open the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator. I have opened the Q&A panel for submission of requests for public comment. Please click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Enter "I would like to make a comment" in the Ask field and submit that to all panelists. I will pause for a moment to allow time for submission of requests. Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, receiving no
let's close it.
requests.
Let's close it, please.
It is closed.
Thank you. Okay, next is agenda item 4, which is the regulations portion of my report, which is also informational. Because of this, I'll ask for comments following each agenda section as opposed to each regulation. Now, some of these sections only have one regulation, so I will be asking for comment after each one. In board adopted regulations approved by the Office of Administrative Law. In this section, there is only one. So the community pharmacy staffing regulation, which establishes, this is the community pharmacy staffing regulation, which establishes the criteria a pharmacy must meet to identify and ensure a person is assigned to assist a pharmacist in compliance with BPC section 4113.5. The regulation took effect on September 15, 2020. Members, are there any comments on this regulation? Okay, hearing none. Oh, please go ahead.
This is Cheryl Butler, and I'd just like to comment that I really appreciate seeing that it is known that it's an immediate effective date is September 15th. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Are there any other comments? Okay, let's open for public comment.
This is the moderator. I've opened the Q&A panel for public comment. If you'd like to make a public comment, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" in the Ask field and submit that to all panelists. I will now pause for allow time for submission.
Looks like we have a quiet group today. Let's close it
We
up.
do. Okay, it is closed.
Okay, next is agenda item 5, discussion and consideration of board adopted regulations undergoing final review by the Office of Administrative Law. The board has 2 regulations undergoing final review by the Office of Administrative Law. First is proposed regulation to amend Title 16, Sections 1769 and 1770, substantial relationship and rehabilitation criteria. When finalized, this proposal will increase transparency and provide clarity to license applicants with respect to the rehabilitation criteria the board considers when evaluating an applicant's eligibility for licensure. The OAL decision is expected by October 27th. Well, that's today, unless an extension is granted under an executive order issued by the governor. I'm going to ask Ann Sodergren, did we have any update on this?
I don't believe so, but I can check with staff and provide an update during the board meeting.
Great, thank you. Okay, the second proposed reg in this section is proposed regulation to amend Title 16, Sections 1702, 1702.1, 1702.5, renewal requirements. This proposal updates the renewal requirement language to apply similarly across most licensing programs. Such an approach will reduce administrative workload associated when new licensing programs are established. As indicated in the meeting materials, the OAL decision is due November 2nd. However, may be extended under the provisions of the governor's executive order. Are there any comments by members on either of the two that were in this section? Okay, hearing no comments, moderator, let's open up for the public.
This is the moderator. I've opened the Q&A panel for public comment. We are displaying instructions on the screen for your use. Please click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of the screen, enter I would like to make a comment in the ask field, and submit that to all panelists. We will now pause for a moment to allow time for submission.
It looks like we're still quiet.
We are.
Let's go ahead and close it.
It is closed.
Thank you. Agenda item 6, discussion and consideration of board adopted regulations undergoing formal review by the Department of Consumer Affairs or the Business, Consumer Services and Housing Agency. The board has one regulation undergoing formal review. It is proposed regulation to amend Title 16, Section 1707, off-site storage. The proposal amends the board's regulation regarding the waiver requirements for off-site storage of records. Under the proposed revisions, entities previously cited for a records violation will be eligible for such a waiver. The measure was adopted by the executive officer on June 3rd, 2020, consistent with our delegation after no negative comments were received. The proposal is currently undergoing formal review by agency. Are there any comments from our members? Okay, hearing none, let's open for the public.
This is the moderator. Public comment is open. Again, the instructions are being displayed on the screen for your use. I will pause for a moment to allow time for submission. Mr. Chairman, we have not received any requests.
Let's close it. Agenda item 7, discussion and consideration of board adopted regulations, staff drafting final rulemaking documents for final review by the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Business, Consumer Services and Housing Agency. The board currently has one regulation under this category. Proposed regulations to amend Title 16 CCR Sections 1708 to 1783 related to dangerous drug distributors and third-party logistics providers. This proposal establishes the regulatory framework for third-party logistics providers. The measure was adopted by the board on July 27th. Members, do you have any comments on this regulation? Okay, moderator, let's open for the public.
This is the moderator. The public comment is now open. Please click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of the screen, enter I would like to make a public comment in the ask field, and submit that to all panelists. We will now pause for a moment. Not seeing any requests, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Let's close it up.
Closed.
Next agenda item, number 8, discussion and consideration of board approved regulations undergoing pre-notice review by the Department of Consumer Affairs or the Business, Consumer Services and Housing Agency. First is proposed regulations to amend Title 16 CCR Section 1715 to update self-assessment forms 17M-13 and 17M-14. This proposal updates the self-assessment forms 17M-13 and 17M-14 as incorporated by reference in Title 16 CCR Section 1715. Additionally, this regulation updates Section 1715 with clarifying language as to the completion and certification requirements of the self-assessment forms. I note it has been undergoing pre-notice review since December of 2018. The next in this section is proposed regulation to amend Title 16 CCR Section 1784 to update the wholesaler 3PL self-assessment form 17M-26. The proposal updates the self-assessment form, and additionally, the regulation updates Section 1784 with clarifying language as to the completion and certification requirements of the self-assessment form. As with the prior package, this regulation proposal has also been undergoing pre-notice review since December 2018. Next is proposed permanent regulation to add Title 16 CCR Section 1747 related to independent HIV pre-exposure and post-exposure prophylaxis furnishing. The proposal will make permanent the emergency regulations that establish the criteria for training programs to meet in order to be offered to pharmacists, so that the pharmacists may independently initiate and furnish PrEP and PEP. So pre-notice review on the package started on February 7th, 2020. Next is proposed regulation to amend Title 16 CCR Section 1715.65 related to inventory reconciliation. The proposal amends and clarifies the requirements for the completion of the inventory reconciliation report. The package was referred to DCA for pre-notice review on May 11th, 2020. The final proposed regulation in the section is proposed regulation to amend Title 16 CCR Section 1715.6 related to drug loss. This proposal amends the drug loss reporting requirements to further define when drug losses must be reported to increase clarity for the regulated public. The package was referred to DCA for pre-notice review on June 3rd, 2020. Members, do you have any comments on the regulations that I just read in this section? If so, please remember to unmute. Hearing none, let's open for the public.
This is the moderator. The Q&A panel has been open for public comment. Please click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Enter "I would like to make a comment" in the Ask field and submit that to all panelists. We will now pause for a moment.
Yeah, I think we can close it.
It is closed.
Starting to feel very lonely up here at the top. Agenda item 11, discussion and consideration of board approved text to initiate rulemaking. Staff drafting documents for pre-notice review by the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency. Members, the board has 4 regulations that are currently with board staff to either draft rulemaking documents for pre-notice review or to evaluate information provided by DCA in response to board submission of documents for the pre-notice review. The first one is proposed regulations to amend Title 16 CCR Section 1793.5 related to the pharmacy technician application, Section 1793.6 related to the pharmacy technician training requirements, and Section 1793.65 related to the pharmacy technician certification program. This proposal establishes the training requirements and certification programs and updates the application for licensure for pharmacy technicians. I note that this regulation package was originally approved by the board in October of 2016. Changes have been requested on a few occasions. The package was resubmitted for pre-notice review in October 2018 and returned to the board for amendments to implement provisions of AB 2138 in December 2019. Most recently, on September 3rd, 2020, the rulemaking package was again returned to board staff. Staff will be reviewing the recommendations offered by DCA to determine the appropriate course of action. Next is proposed regulation to amend Title 16 CCR Section 1709 related to pharmacy ownership, management, and control, including through trusts. The proposal amends the board's regulations regarding ownership to include provisions relating to trust ownership of pharmacies. The package was returned to the board on April 22nd, 2020. I note that this package was originally approved by the board in October 2016. As with the prior regulation, changes have been requested on several occasions. I've been advised that subsequent to the release of the meeting materials, board staff provided the requested information to DCA. Next is proposed regulation to amend Title 16 CCR Section 1704 related to address change notification. Members, during our July 2020 meeting, the board approved initiation of a rulemaking to require a licensee to maintain a current email address with the board should the licensee have one. The final proposed regulation in this section is proposed regulation to add Title 16 CCR Section 1708.1 related to the temporary closure of facilities. During our July 2020 meeting, the board approved initiation of a rulemaking that will establish notification requirements of the temporary closure of licensed facilities. Members, do you have any comments on the regulations I just read from this section? If you do, please unmute your mics. Okay, hearing none. Oh,
Doing great. Thank you.
yeah. Hello.
No comment, Greg. I just wanted to say
okay.
hello because there's just silence here, you know. So
Oh, yeah.
you're doing good.
Thank you very much. Sorry. Okay, thank you. Okay, moderator, let's open up for the public.
This is the moderator. I've opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment, please click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Enter "I would like to make a comment" into the Ask field and submit that to all panelists. And Mr. Chairman, I do see we have one comment from Daniel Martinez.
Oh, okay.
Daniel, I have unmuted your microphone. You will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Danny Martinez with the California Pharmacists Association. I figured I'd break the quiet silence cone.
Thank you, Danny.
I actually do have a question in relation to item B. I know that this issue has been in the works now, as you mentioned, for about 4 years, and CPHA had some comments on this a couple of years ago. I guess my question is, in this back and forth ping pong with the board and DCA, is board staff or anyone able to share what exactly the issues are and how they're being addressed?
Good question. I'll ask Ann Sodergren to respond to that.
I think I'll keep the comments pretty general because conversations with council are typically privileged. So there has been a bit of an iterative process here. There's been some staffing changes and reassignments, and with that, there's been an opportunity to facilitate some different communication, discussing how best to move forward with the regulation. But I do believe that we have addressed the concerns identified and look forward to the pre-review process continuing.
And thank you, Ann. And I guess, and I understand if you can't answer this next question, but I'll just ask it anyway. Do you expect with this next iteration that this would hopefully be the final one that will then be sent out for public comment and or have the NOPA, I should say, NOPA release?
So Danny, I don't think that I'm in a position to answer that because it's not our decision.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Danny.
And Chairman, we have no additional requests for public comment at this time.
Okay, well, thank you. Let's close it up.
It is closed.
That concludes the regulation portion of my report. Next item is our next committee meeting is scheduled for January 27th, 2020. Additional dates are detailed Let's see, in the chair report, which I think you have a copy of, I would like to thank members of the public who observed or participated in the meeting today, and hope to see you at the main board meeting. Hope to hear from you at least. And this meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, Mr. President. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I realize I missed roll call. Sorry, I was on mute.
No problem. Thank you.
All right.
January 27, 2021. We don't want to repeat 2020, Greg.
Sorry. Thank you. Thank you for the correction.
All right, you guys, take care. Talk to you later.
You too. Bye.